are joined now by Kevin Kugler, who does play-by-play for, I think, literally everything. Have they made that official, Kevin? Have they named you just the play-by-play guy for every single sporting event yet?
I hope not. I mean, I can only do so much. I gotta manage all the sporting events that I call play-by-play for. I gotta call Damon every morning and say, all right, Damon, here's the hot take that you need this day on this. Here's the thoughts you should offer on Caitlin Clark today, Damon. I mean, it's not an easy task that I have, but so hopefully I'm not doing everything, Ravi. I mean, it's enough to manage the life of Damon. It's enough to manage the life of so many others, plus call these games.
So it is interesting. I think the hardest part about having you on is like what to talk about, because we could just tell jokes, we could talk history, we could talk sports, we could talk. It's just narrowing it down is part of it. Like you got to feel pretty good. At least you're not pigeonholed.
Well, I mean, I guess I have that going for me, which is nice. I mean, it feels like what is the phrase? Damning with faint praise. I mean, it kind of feels like that a little bit. I mean,
so how many miles have you knocked out? Because you're in Vegas, right?
I'm in Vegas. Yes. Yesterday we were in Tennessee, watching the Bengals try to figure out if there's any path for them to get to the playoffs, and seeing if they can salvage something out of what's been a remarkable season for Joe Burrow. And then hopped on a short little 4-hour plus flight to Vegas last night. I'm here in Vegas, and tomorrow and Wednesday I'll be in LA to see UCLA and USC basketball, playing their non-conference slate, and then and then who knows where I'll be after that. I really don't know. I wish I could tell you where I'll be after that, but we don't have our assignment yet for Sunday, so could be anywhere. Could be at home. I don't know.
Hey, so this is interesting. Can I ask you something? You know me, I'm a big press conference guy. When you listen to Burrow and you're doing your prep and you're watching him and you're seeing these games unfold, does he play anything like the person that you hear when you pit the two, like against or with each other?
He is one of the most fascinating, and I do say this with all seriousness, he's one of the more fascinating players in the National Football League. Like you know his background very well. And for those that don't, obviously, he's a coach's kid. He grew up riding his bike on the field at Memorial Stadium. People may not know this. He at one point would have had interest in coming to Nebraska. It's something you might want to bring up on a message board or perhaps on the social media channels. Yeah, he had some interest in that. Didn't get the opportunity to. But he is what's really interesting about him is that he is an introvert, a very big introvert. And if you know introverted people, that's a difficult tightrope to walk when you are in a position that demands a certain amount of exuberance and a certain amount of leadership. And sometimes being an introvert, it's hard to lead a large group of people in the public eye. And I really do think there are times where Joe is trying to juggle the notion of, I just want to play ball and I just want to be with my guys on the field versus the demands that position has. Nobody's feeling sorry for him, and I'm not asking anybody to feel sorry for him. It's just a really interesting thing about Joe Burrow, and we've gotten the chance to talk with him several times over the last several years and covering his games. I really like him. He's a really thoughtful, likable, confident individual. I mean, he is extremely confident in his abilities. He should be, because he's a tremendous quarterback. But he is also an introverted personality. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic when it comes to quarterback. Patrick Mahomes does not strike me as an introvert. Josh Allen does not strike me as an introvert. Joe Burrow is an introvert. And I think when you look at him through that lens, it gives you a little different look at Joe Burrow. He's a really interesting kid.
It's funny because in any other year, he'd be a serious MVP candidate.
No doubt. His numbers are off. And yesterday was not one of his best games, but his numbers are off the charts. He is having historically good an historically good season with a wide receiver who's also having a historically good season. That offense is ridiculously good. Their defense is starting to figure it out a little bit, but it could be the competition they played the last couple of weeks too.
Yeah, it could be a too little, too late situation for him as well.
Yeah.
Kevin, it's fascinating that you brought up the confidence of Joe Burrow, because when you said he was an introvert at first, I'm like, that doesn't quite seem right. But it's because he's so confident. I don't think people would immediately think, oh, Joe Burrow introverted, because you see confident people and you assume, oh, they're easygoing, they're outgoing, whatever. Like that. That's kind of noodling around in my head a little bit there. You're messing with my brain here, Kevin.
Yeah, and the thing about an introvert is it's easier sometimes for the introvert to put on that face for a while publicly and kind of cover it up without really giving a whole lot away. And I think he's become pretty good at that. He's just one of those dudes. And I think we've all known people like this in our lives who are, if you just said to them, all you've got to do is go do blah, whatever blah is that makes you happy. For Damon, it's probably, watching random tape of games. I mean, if you could say to Damon, you're going to sit in this dark room, there'll be a recliner and a TV and a clicker, and you can watch random tape for 19 hours a day, and you don't have to do anything else, Damon would probably be like, this is the greatest moment of my life. And do I have to leave a radius of about 4 blocks? No, you do not. 100%. And when you do leave, someone will show up at your door and pick you up to take you where you need to go. That would be the ultimate dream for Damon Benning. Well, for Joe Burrow, I think it's, if you could just put him on the field and play ball, practice, be with his guys, I think that's all he wants. He's just a football dude. He told us this week he had moved 4 times when he was a kid, because you're a coach's kid, and football and sports was always the way that he made friends. And so you become a little bit of an introvert when you're always hopping around from place to place sometimes. And that was his entry. That was the way that he got in to whatever school he was in. And so now he's an adult. But what's his path in? Well, his path in is still sports.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were mentioning his wide receiver and all these rumors, and Chase could wind up a Steeler and he's their top target. I'm like, who is he going to catch passes from? It's like Burrow. But anyway, it makes me think of caps and money. And I won't even get into baseball yet because you're not there yet. But let's just take NFL, college basketball, and college football. 3 things right dab smack that you're rotating through now. Of those 3, which one does money, or i.e. cap space, or i.e. NIL, affect the most?
Boy, I have to say right now, I think college football.
Isn't it crazy how you didn't pick your pro sport?
But here's why. Here's the reason why. Because in pro sports, there are rules, guidelines, restrictions, guardrails, none of which seem to exist right now in the landscape of college athletics. It's the Wild West of, here's some money, go get it. Nobody has a contract. Nobody is required to stay anywhere. There has to be some sort of middle ground. I love the fact that players have freedom. I love the fact that players have the opportunity to seek out what's best for them. I do. I think that's a great thing. But I also don't think it's good for the sport and the long-term sustainability of the sport, and, of course, the long-term sustainability of the money that these guys are seeking, if you don't have some sort of restrictions, guardrails, contractual obligations that require this person to stay in one place for a significant amount of time. Not to mention the whole nonsense that we have going on right now of the transfer portal open before the season ends. And this is absurd. All of this is absurd right now. It saps my love in some ways for the college game because it's just so chaotic. Give me a little bit of order, just a little bit. I don't need a lot. I like chaos. Chaos is fun. But give me a little bit of order so that as a fan, when I walk into the building, I at least have an inkling as to who might be putting on the jersey of my favorite team that day.
We're talking with Kevin Kugler, play-by-play voice of everybody. Kevin, as you kind of sit through the NFL and some of these franchises, I know you're in Vegas tonight, which I'm sure will be a super fun game. I hope it is for you. But there was a few teams that played yesterday that I'm looking at and I go, I'm trying to figure out who's actually good. And we've seen Denver look really bad and really good. We've seen Tampa look really bad and really good. And then the other 3 I'm going to give you are Houston, Baltimore, and Green Bay. If you had to pick one team out of those 5 that you actually believe is good, who would it be?
I would probably lean Green Bay, only because I think what Green Bay has done is they've tested themselves against the best. They've struggled against the 2 lost teams, because I really do think there's a hierarchy this year in the NFL. I think you're looking at some really, really good teams. I think the Bills are a really good team. I think the Chiefs are a flawed team that knows how to win, which is, I think, a really underrated characteristic. So they're very good, depending on the health of Patrick Mahomes. I think that the Steelers are solid. I think the Texans are solid. I think the Eagles are really good. I think the Lions are really good. I think the Vikings are good to really good, and I think the Packers are probably in that category as well. The problem that I have with the Packers is people have forgotten at the beginning of the year that Jordan Love was so dinged up, and it took him forever to get back and feel healthy to where he can do everything he needs to do. Now that he can, and I think this team's about to get a little healthier as well, I like this Packers team. I don't know that I like this Packers team as a world champion, but of the teams you mentioned, that's probably the one I lean most to saying is good.
Kev, let me jump over to college basketball. No, let me go to college football first. As you're kind of looking at this, well, it's your fault. Don't be talented.
Hey, I will go wherever you want me to go.
Well, if you said it like,
if you want to dive into whatever, dive into Damon Benning's, weirdness. We can do that too. Whatever.
No, you know that all too well.
It doesn't matter to me.
That's the problem. Let's go, baby. Wow. So, which sport did I land on?
College football. Yeah.
Kevin, as you're
talking about your weirdness with food. Got it. Okay, go.
As you're watching like these playoffs play out, and we're going to start on the 20th and the bowl tie-ins, was there any of this part of you, because you're all over the place, you talk to these coaches, you know what they're dealing with, was it just a foregone conclusion that you weren't going to get any uniformity in the conferences before they rang the bell and it was dinner time, or were there coaches that were wanting uniformity before we got to expansion?
I think there are coaches that want uniformity. Coaches love to know what is going on. Coaches like to have order, and coaches want to have an idea as to what's happening. I mean, you're a coach. Yeah. You have a specific order of things that you like to do. You have a specific way that you like to do things. I've not met too many head coaches that are like, I don't know, let's just see what happens. I mean, there are a lot of coaches have plans. They have detailed and organized schedules every day. And I think that extends to beyond just their individual day-to-day schedule. I think they wanted to see something before we just sort of went, here we go. I think they wanted to see a little more order. But again, that's the problem with college athletics right now, is that we are lacking anything that resembles top-down leadership. There's nobody that's got control over any of this stuff. Coaches have told me this for years now. They spent most of their lives trying to keep agents out of the game, and now they have given the game to agents. So you spent most of your time working to keep this thing separate from that, and now all of a sudden that is all that's running the sport. And that, again, it's not sustainable. Any of this, the way it is right now, is not a sustainable model. It is working in the short term, but it's not going to be working like this. There's no scenario that it hasn't gone through massive change in the next 5 to 10 years. No scenario.
Kevin, so, I mean, how do you get the genie back in the bottle then?
You don't. The genie's out. The genie is gone. You just have to figure out a way to use the 3 wishes that you have to try to bend the genie your direction. That's the only way that this works. The genie is gone. You rubbed the lamp. You wanted this. You rubbed the lamp. You said, we need massive change in college athletics. We need this. We need that. We need this. We need that. And you rubbed that lamp, and the genie popped out, and the genie said, look at this. Here we go. Now you've got to find somebody else to rub the lamp and get their 3 wishes, because the only way you can figure out how to rein this in is by having some sort of guardrails, having some sort of plan to control it a little bit more. It's not going back to the way it was. It's not going to, the genie doesn't go back in the bottle. The genie just modifies the current landscape to try to make it something that's more sustainable. It's going to end up looking like a nice amalgamation of collegiate professionalism. And that's the only thing that you're going to be able to muster out of this in some way, shape, or form, is college athletics is going to have a very pro feel, but you're going to have some of the pro guardrails that exist in every professional sport. No professional sport would run themselves the way college athletics is running themselves right now. They just would not, because no one would want to be owning or investing in those professional businesses, those professional teams, without any sort of rules and regulations. And right now you just don't have that. So you've got to get that in place, which you should have done before you rubbed the lamp in the first place.
And a trust would have happened first. But okay, so before I get into basketball, let me ask you one more thing about football, because I see it a little bit with hoops. Is there a place? The 4 teams that I liked weren't talent led in the playoffs. I went with the teams that I felt like were a combination of the most talented and had the best chemistry, and that was Penn State, Notre Dame, Oregon, and Georgia. Even in the world of transactions, is there a place for that in athletics, even amongst the top, where you think, well, it's still going to boil down to the teams that get along isn't the right word, but seem to be the most cohesive as a unit, even amongst the elite talented?
I think it's the coaches that are able to blend it the quickest. And sometimes I think that's going to be luck, right? I mean, you're bringing in however many players from a transfer portal, blending them with freshmen if you're still trying to build through the freshman route, which I think you're going to start to see some schools say, you know what, maybe we'll just bring 4 or 5 freshmen and we'll just refresh in the transfer portal every year. I don't know. But you look at the teams that are able to blend quicker. I think Arizona State's done a really good job, for example, of a team that has blended a program quickly under a head coach to turn into a quick playoff team. Indiana's a different example. They brought in so many guys who had already had history together. Yeah. So that's another way to blend quickly. You have
that's the cohesive part.
That's the cohesive part of it. You're already cohesive. You've been through the grind before. You built kind of the old-fashioned way, and then you picked up your house and you moved it to a different neighborhood, maybe a better neighborhood. I don't know, but you moved it to a different neighborhood. But your house was still your house. You still knew where the bathroom was. You didn't have to remember where you put that thing in the drawer because it's still in the drawer. So you had that cohesiveness there. I think, to me, it's the coaches that are able to blend that the quickest in years forward that are going to be able to be in this position. It's not going to be one of those things where the quick fix requires a quick fix from a coach as well. The quick fix to get everybody spackled together very quickly in order to move forward. That's difficult to do, especially when you're bringing in so many new faces every year. And you get to this point in the season and you don't know who's still on your team. I mean, look at Nebraska going to the Pinstripe Bowl. There's a lot of faces that have been playing over the last several months that aren't going to be in New York in a couple of weeks for that game. Mm-hmm. It's not the playoffs, obviously, but it's a scenario that, look, Penn State just lost their backup quarterback, for crying out loud. This is the scenario that we live in right now. The coaches that are able to make those cohesive connections early and strong cohesive connections early are going to be the ones who survive this the best.
Kevin, we were having this conversation earlier kind of about coaches, but in the current state of college football, would you rather have a great assembler of talent or a guy that was great at maximizing who was on his roster?
I would rather, at this point, in this moment, have a great assembler of talent. If you are someone who can scoop up 40 great players, and if you've got any sort of ability to mold and mesh these guys together, you're going to have a better chance to win. Because, look, it's difficult, I think, to be able – I don't know that you can build the old way anymore, because a team can just come in and supplement with 15 good players, and maybe those 15 good players hit, maybe they don't. That's the risk you play every single time you do something like this. That is the risk that you take when you say, I'm going to bring in 15 guys from the transfer portal. Well, maybe they stink. Maybe they don't get along. Maybe they don't like each other. Maybe one of them isn't as good as you thought he was, and it sort of throws off the whole chemistry of the deal. I don't know. But I do think if I'm going to be a coach right now in this current climate, and I am a great assembler of talent, I think I have an edge over most other coaches who maybe are trying to do it the old-fashioned way. Maybe you're trying to blend here and there. I think you've got to go out, get a bunch of talent, and see what you can do. If you can mesh them together, you've got a great chance to win early.
So is there an advantage as we kind of transition into college hoops of schools that you think, like, because we've seen it a couple of different ways, right? There's the Shaka Smarts, and they're 6th in the country. I get it, rough weekend with Dayton, but Shaka hasn't been a portal guy. But then you go to like a Bruce Pearl or even Rick Barnes, some of these coaches that have done it differently. Is there a model that you think works for quicker cohesion with a smaller group of players like college hoops?
I think college hoops is easier because A, they've done it longer. There's been more transfers in college hoops. And B, if I'm one really good basketball player and I transfer onto a team, I can immediately elevate that team. I don't need to have a massive influx of talent. If I've got a good basketball team and I'm, Coach Kevin Kugler, 5-time national champion coach of the year, and I go out and I say, hi, I'm Coach Kevin Kugler, 5-time national, because I would introduce myself as that every single place I went if I were a 5-time national champion coach of the year. I'm like at grocery stores, at the airport, it wouldn't matter. And I am introducing myself as the 5-time national champion coach of the year. But I get one really good player on my team that can completely catapult a team to the next level. I don't know that you can say that in football. I go out and get a really good quarterback. That's great. But if I have no one who can, but if I have 5-time national champion coach Kevin Kugler running routes as a wide receiver, I have no chance to win with that great quarterback. So I like the college basketball aspect of it better because I do think it's a quicker fix with one or two really good players. Now you see guys like Eric Musselman at USC, when he came in, he revamped the entire roster. I think it's 11 new players on that roster this year for USC. So there are coaches who do that, and I think you'll see that a lot because there's so much transition in college basketball. They're more used to it. But I really do still believe that a coach can go get one or two players to supplement from the portal and make them a national champion contender. Purdue did it last year. They had all those players to go out and get Lance Jones. I mean, Matt Painter is not a transfer portal guy. They get one guy in from the portal that they needed to fill a specific need. And that was enough to push that team into a national championship situation.
As you're watching and you're getting ready, you just mentioned what's going on at SC, and I just watched Cronin and UCLA in Arizona. You still, basketball, though, kind of like football, what you were talking about, you still kind of need that core group of guys, though, if you want to be able to function in chaos.
You do. You need that core, but it can be, the core is smaller. In football, what's your core? How big does your core need to be to function in chaos? Yeah. Can it be just one player? Can it be just one quarterback? Can it be just a safety? Can it be some leader on each side of the ball? Maybe, but I feel like you need more. I feel like you need more from that team to be able to galvanize each position group in a certain way. I don't know that you necessarily, if I'm the alpha dog on a college basketball team, I can take over that moment and say, follow me, guys. 4 other guys on the floor, follow me in this moment. Or, hey, guys, it's crunch time. You know what to do. Feed it to me. I'm going to handle the rest of it from here. I just think there's a cohesiveness that comes from the demonstrated ability that you have that you can then trickle that down to the rest of the team. And I think it's a lot easier to do that with a smaller roster and a smaller core in college basketball than you have in college football.
So the hardest part of your job is figuring out the rosters. That was the note of all this whole deal, right?
And as a 5-time national champion coach of the year, it's really not that big a deal to me.
And to prove your point, Larry Bird dragged a bunch of Kevin Kluger's to a national title game. So I think you're right on basketball, Kevin. We appreciate the time.
Thank you. You know what? I would have been more than happy to wear that ring around and say, yeah, that's right. I'm a national champion. Sure, Bird had 83 of the 85 points we scored, but I also was on the floor.
Hey, safe travels too, buddy.
Have fun in Vegas.
See you guys.